So, hello, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I worked with Professor Fred Fang. Basically, we collected data and I performed analysis during the Dearborn Healthy Streets program. And so the Dearborn Healthy Streets program, it was essentially birthed, it was a pilot program that came as a result of essentially COVID. So with COVID introducing lack of indoor activities and a greater need for social distancing, and also just lack of travel, communities such as Dearborn came together and they decided they wanted to implement some sort of incentive, but also shared and slowed streets in order for people to be outside in their communities and know that they have this space, that they don't have to be as hopefully as cognizant of their surroundings, and know that motorists are a bit more aware that this is going to be a more high traffic street. So what you're seeing here is this is an example of what was done to kind of promote this. Was we had barrels at intersections throughout Dearborn. And so there were a total of 4, and I analyzed 2 of those intersections, and there would be a sign on there. And so there's, as you can see on the sign, there's also a QR code in case people would be interested, like walking by or cycling by. And they, pardon me. And so in order for me to get this data and to be able to basically discern the efficacy of this program, I would go to, me and Professor Fang would go to the locations. And so we would have a GoPro set up. And so this is an example of one of the neighborhoods that I was at in Dearborn. And so I would be at an intersection. And so I would have the scope of all 4 roads where they cross. And these data collections would be in 2-hour intervals. And so we would record it. And when I would take it home, I would have to kind of give you an idea. Let's say a vehicle is approaching on your right in front of the blue house. I would have to be able to tell if that vehicle is adhering to the stop signage. So that's essentially what I was doing. Was I was trying to discern whether or not the signage that we had posted was alerting motorists to be more cognizant of traffic stops in order to create that slower and safer space. So I did this in a spreadsheet. And so this is an example. I would have different video files. And so I would name the video file, and I would have the timestamp, and then I would go to a drop-down menu of the different types of motorists as well as individuals. So we had SUVs, cyclists, sedans, trucks, other type of vehicles such as like vans or like maybe like large municipal vehicles, as well as motorcyclists and pedestrians. And if you're on a scooter, all those things, they were be able to be individualized. And then I also marked which way they were coming from and where they were going to, and then their compliance to the stop signs. The compliance was only needed if it was a motor vehicle. It was not needed if it was a bike or someone running or anything like that. So what we found is, so this is in front of you is the side-by-side of one of the intersections. And the first on the left was taken April 18th, and on the right was taken May 23rd. So on the 18th, this was before signage was posted. This was before the program was even introduced into Dearborn and to the public. And so the numbers here, I took the data and then I essentially coded it to be able to tell me the different types of vehicles and, and their stop sign compliance. So, but if you look both of them at side by side, you can kind of discern for yourself, there isn't a huge significance. So we carried on to the other location, and it was fairly similar. You see side by side that there are maybe perhaps on the May 23rd, you in fact even see, less significantly slowing down, but you also see the other vehicles had not slowed down at all and straight blew through. And with that, that carries on to the limitations, which I will talk to after that. So keep that in mind about May 23rd. But before I discuss limitations, I did want to say, out of the program or the program announcement, we did see an increase of cyclists and pedestrians between the two sets of data. But however, going back to limitations, this could be for a number of things. It could have been the weather is getting nicer. It could have been the fact that, we were now in May, and so school is, potentially getting out, and so people had more time to be outside. Also, the time of day could matter. As we carried on into May, days were getting longer, and so people were outside more. They had more time. They had more desire to be outside with longer days, and also events. So going back to May 23rd, the limitation of having only a 2-hour time interval was poor because, for example, on May 23rd, I had a wedding procession go through. And so no one's going to stop through signage with that. And so that is something to take into factor when you have those events and you have a small time interval. It can really skew your data. If this was running 24 hours, it probably would have, somehow corrected itself. But in my case, it definitely left a skewing. But all in all, moving forward, it's already in the process of having different signage. As you saw in the barrel, the signage was a bit small. And so motorists, as they're going by, they can't always see it. It's also not the best idea to have, a very busy sign at an intersection for people who are driving. So the Dearborn Healthy Streets is working on creating a more conducive sign, and perhaps even having a sign more designated for motorists, and then one with a little bit more detail designated towards pedestrians with that QR code and whatnot. But all in all, I was definitely very grateful to have this experience. And I am a huge advocate for being able to be outside, and definitely throughout COVID, being able to be in my community and be outside definitely kept some sanity. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you.